I was investing in a market like Wyoming that had incredible cash flow, low taxes, low insurance, and not a whole lot of competition, right? But a lot of demand in terms of buyers. So that kind of big combination of everything allowed me to build my vertically integrated company and ultimately leave my job and become a full-time investor.
Casey, thank you for joining me on our Thought Leader Spotlight series. I'm your host over here, Matt Camp, Head of Partnerships at DealMachine. And on these, we really like to shine a spotlight on industry experts like yourself, hear how you see the world evolving in real estate today. So today, really excited to welcome on our friend Casey Gregersen. I know you were a petroleum engineer at Shell for 12 years, turned into real estate investing, now have a vertically integrated company. You go direct to seller all the way through to construction. You help people invest in real estate passively through your fund. And really, you mentioned your superpower is helping people close deals, especially creative deals. I mean, you've got over 250 doors in your portfolio, or aiming for 100 deals next year. So, Casey, really appreciate you taking time out here today to help our audience too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excited to be on here and catch up, Matt.
Yeah. Can you tell me more? I mean, I mentioned a little bit about your background and your previous experience, but can you talk a little bit more about how you got into real estate and what inspired you to do that too?
Yeah, you bet. So grew up not really involved in real estate at all. I was actually went to school for my undergrad was math and chemistry, and then I got a master's in petroleum engineering, which don't really use any of it other than still like the math and do a lot of underwriting. But anyway, yeah, I had a job with Shell out of college because I was a petroleum engineer, went to Houston, worked really for 12 years until I was able to build up my real estate company big enough to leave that, which was just 2 years ago. But it really all started is my first property I bought when I was going to school at the University of Wyoming. My dad, it was in 2010. My dad actually co-signed with me, and it's a longer story. I'll give you the cliff notes, but he co-signed. We used like $10,000 from my college savings and bought that first property, and that was my first rental, right? And I did for like 5 years. All I did is just hold that thing, and I worked my W-2 job, and then like a lot of other people, read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then the light bulb came on of like, wow, okay, I've got this property that I've just kept and thought was kind of cool because I got a couple $100 a month in cash flow and got some tax write-offs. But now I'm like, oh, wow, that's an asset. This is how you build wealth, is with assets. So when I read that book, that's what caused me to go buy the second one. And I had the blessing when I worked in oil and gas that I worked in the field for 2 weeks on a drilling rig or on a frac spread. And then I have 2 weeks off, like completely off, like didn't even have to turn on my work cell phone. Right. So at that point, I started finding deals that I could find off market, fix and flip them. And sometimes I'd fix and flip them to sell, or other times I'd keep them as rental properties. And the other kind of cool thing I had was I started building relationships with small banks like early on. It's one of the best tips I ever got. And I always recommend to people that like, you got to get out of like, when you first do your couple loans, you're talking to mortgage companies trying to get these 30-year fixed loans, which are great on your first one or your primary. Right. But I encourage people like go right away, start building relationships with small banks, because what I did was I had a strong W-2 income. I started getting experience fixing and flipping and holding rentals to where now I had these good relationships. And that's what really helped me grow and scale my company and my portfolio, and ultimately allowed me to leave my W-2 job because I was able to use leverage and I was able to do buy and hold real estate. And the last kind of piece was I was investing in a market like Wyoming that had incredible cash flow because we have low taxes, low insurance, and not a whole lot of competition, right? But a lot of demand in terms of buyers, but not a whole lot of competition in terms of investors. So that kind of big combination of everything allowed me to build my vertically integrated company and ultimately leave my job and become a full-time investor.
Yeah, appreciate the tips there. I was going to ask as well. I know you told me a little bit in terms of your creative deal structure and how you are great at kind of finding those win-wins for sellers. Can you kind of talk us through how you assess an opportunity, how you can think through, oh, this is a good opportunity to bring in, some kind of creative deal structure? Like maybe give us your thought process a little bit of how you structure creative deals and how you explain that to sellers.
You bet. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously perfected over the years. I mean, it started with me just reading, because actually right when I was going down that rabbit hole of like Rich Dad Poor Dad podcast, I read Brandon Turner's book of how to buy real estate with low and no money down. And that was the first time that I was like, okay, well, because I could only grow so fast, right? When you're putting 20% down on every deal. So what I started doing is, well, what about seller finance? What about a seller carry? What about talking, for example, the easiest one to do is if a property is owned free and clear and they don't need all the cash, that's a great way to go buy the property. So just over the years, I've gotten really good at perfecting essentially the pitch or the presentation to a seller. And then I would combine that with like, so this is, I think, the biggest key. And a lot of people want to go buy houses creatively that are like people maybe outside of like Pace Mortgage community. They're like, hey, I want to buy a property sub two or with seller finance. But you talk to other people, other investors are like, that's difficult. And it certainly is. But the first key for sure is you got to go direct to seller, right? You got to have some way to be talking to sellers like directly and not having like trying to do deals on the market is it can be done, but it's a challenge. But you've got to be talking directly to the seller, the decision maker. And then what I found was I was doing that all the time, right? I was making cash offers, just like a lot of other wholesalers who start out. I learned to make an offer based on 70% of the ARV minus repairs. And then if you wanted the wholesale fee, you took that off as well. But what I found was, at least in our markets in Wyoming, it's not a huge market to where I had a bunch of people that were highly motivated and needed this cash offer. But what I did find is a lot of them wanted an easy solution. A lot of them were okay with, a lot of them were really just focused on how much they were going to sell their house for, which to me is like the best lead in when you're trying to work a creative finance deal is like, hey, Mr. Seller, or hey, Matt, is getting top dollar the most important thing for you, or do you just want to sell this thing quick for a cash offer? Because I'm going to give you both, right? And I'm always going to walk them through both. But I always explain to them, hey, if you give me the right terms, I can get you top dollar. And in markets like right now where things are not moving quite as fast and it's not a bunch of bidding wars, or in a situation where the house needs work, I can still get them top dollar by as long as they give me the terms. So people really put their guard down when you present it like that because they're like, okay, because I mean a lot of these people are getting the cash offers and they're tired of being lowballed. So I try to stand out by being like, hey, I can do that too, but I can also do this for you, which might actually solve your problem.
Yeah, that's so good. So if they're in that situation where say they own it free and clear, say that you're coming into it and they're looking for that top dollar cash offer, can you kind of walk us through, get in the weeds there a little bit of how to pitch that to them, how to structure that deal, how you come up with the numbers of what you're going to offer? Like I'd love to hear your specifics there.
Yeah, I mean, here's how I break it down for people. So, like, you got your cash offer, which, man, I used to be at like 70% of value. I push, man, because of the market, how it's changed so much and interest rates, I've gotten, and honestly, just because I fix and flip a lot. And if you fix and flip, inevitably you're going to lose money on some deals, right? And there's also some deals you do great on, but I've just become way more conservative on my fix and flip. So I'm offering like cash offer, I got to be at like 50 to 60% of the value. Of the after repair value minus repairs. Okay. So now though, when I start to underwrite and look at the deals from creative, if this person needs like 90% or even like 85% of what the property's worth, that's my go-to to go to. It should be a novation, right? And if those people who know what a novation is, you basically agree upon a price and the seller gives you the ability to market it on the MLS or do whatever you need to move the house. And often maybe we'll do a cleanup or do some light repairs to help get them top dollar. Because then basically we sell the house for retail, right? So that's kind of the top end of it, right? And then I mentioned the lower end would be the cash offer. The one in the middle is often like, especially if it needs work, I'll be like, hey, and this is my favorite strategy, Matt. We often say, rather than if the house needs work and it's got a lot of equity, we call this our revive method. So we tell them, hey, Matt, so I could give you the cash offer and I give them that number and I tell them, don't hang up on me. Don't be mad. I'm just going to give you the number, but keep listening. So then I walk them into, I can actually pay more than all these other guys giving you the cash offer if you let me go in and flip the house myself. And as long as you're okay with me paying you in 60 to 90 days, once I fix it up and flip it, then I can pay you more money. So what we essentially do is we'll take over the property, we'll transfer the deed, right? We will give them a promissory note to protect their interest because essentially when the property sells, right? I define all this on the front end with the seller. But let's say on the back end, once we've fixed the property up and sold it, at that point, it gets paid in this order, right? They'll have a loan that we take over sub two. So obviously that goes first. They're in first position. After that, we pay back my rehab. right? And that number is defined on the front end, and I build in some cushion, and I'm the general contractor, so we obviously build in a profit there, right? So that gets paid second, and after that we profit share. And when I build it out like that, and the seller basically he's participating with me on the flip to where he's getting some of the upside. When I show the seller that back end number, it's almost always way more than they're gonna. It's always more than they're gonna get in the cash offer, right? There's no guarantees, but we walk in knowing that with the seller, and I'm basically like, hey, you can, to summarize, you can sell this at a big discount right now because it's very risky, and you have a limited buyer's pool, right? Because it needs work. If you let me go fix it up, we can sell it for top dollar, and you're going to get to participate on that profit along with me. And people love it. It's just I mean, obviously they got to have equity and they got to have some time, right? This doesn't work if somebody's going to be, if they need like all their equity like next week to buy their next house, right? It doesn't work for that. But there still are a lot of situations where they're like, yeah, I would much rather wait 60 to 90 days and make an extra 20 or 30 or 50,000, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Do you have like a specific example you could walk through for our audience of like, hey, yeah, here's the purchase price, here's what we, here's the profit share we did. Like, do you have anything there you could kind of walk us through to really get people in the shoes of what a deal like this could look like?
Yeah, absolutely. We did this one. And here's the other cool thing is I really perfected this in Wyoming and Montana, and it worked really well. And now I'll tell you a recent one we did outside of, it was up in Washington. And we took over the loan. So the loan amount was just easy numbers. It was 275,000, right? These people were actually, they were behind and they were going to be foreclosed on in about 10 days. So the numbers on that is they were down, loan amount 275. I had to catch up like $50,000 in arrears or they were going to be foreclosed on. So they had some pretty significant motivation. So they were like, man, do we just fire sell this thing so we don't get foreclosed on? And because they were at that point, they're trying to save their equity, right? But this house, to show you the numbers, I was going to go put in like it was going to be put in like 200,000 into the house, right? It needed a big renovation. So the 275 plus 200 was at like 475, but the comps on this house were like 600 to 700. So there was still a good spread on it. So you guys can kind of see, but these people, like a lot of other people, there's no way in heck they're coming up with $200,000 to go fix this up. And maybe they could get a HELOC or something, but again, this is happening in like a couple weeks. So they had some urgency. So yeah, that's how we structured it to where 275 loan, our renovation costs were roughly 200, right? So sells, that's 475 total that gets paid first. And then everything after that, and here's the thing too, people always ask me, what is the split? Like, is it 50-50, right? But here's the thing, that split is actually more favorable to the seller. A lot of times it's like 80-20 to the seller to where, because again, I'm making sure that I get paid second on my rehab and I'm the GC and we build in a profit number there and we just tell them, hey, this is it. This is the number. And if you like it, great. If not, you don't have to do it. Right. But I'm okay ensuring that I get a profit on that when I get paid there first. Right. And then I'll give 80% to them and I'll just keep a little small. To me, it's just the cherry on top at the end.
Smart.
On the profit.
Love it, man. Yeah. And is it similar, even if you're not taking over the loan, like if it's a free and clear property, same type of structure in terms of how you're thinking about each position? Mm-hmm.
For sure. Yeah. We just did one just like that in Georgia where like, it's pretty much free and clear. It's the house is worth over $1 million and they have like a $70,000 loan, but whether it's free and clear like that, it's just a bigger profit share. Like sometimes it's like 95% to the seller, 5% to me. Right. But what I do is I just have a spreadsheet and I'd be happy to share with anybody who's interested. But the variables are you obviously got to know what their loan amount is and you got to be able to estimate the rehab. And then what I do is I give them like 4 to 5 scenarios of like purchase price because the big unknown that we don't know is purchase price. And what I do is I show them like in a table, like, hey, here's our low case, here's our medium, and here's our high. And I show them what their profit's going to be. Right. But when I'm actually doing this underwriting, and maybe if you're a math guy, you'll like this. If not, maybe I'm going too fast. But the number you're tweaking is you look at your rehab, right? You got to be able to build a little bit of profit into your rehab to make it worth your while and use your guys. And then the other part is the percentage of the profit share, right? So whether it's 95% or 80% or 75, whatever it is, I play with that number because at the very bottom, I'm looking at how much is that seller going to get on the back end. And that's how I'm presenting this to them because it's like, hey, this is what I think you'll make on the back end if you wait these 60 to 90 days, right? Here's your cash offer up here, right? Your cash offer's here. here on the back end is what you could potentially make in these kind of scenarios, right? But when
Yeah.
you're underwriting this deal, what you're playing with is a percentage, right? So without seeing the spreadsheet, it makes more sense, but hopefully kind of show you the underwriting.
Yeah. No, I mean that's so good. Are you okay with sharing the spreadsheet with our community as well then?
Absolutely. Yeah, I love to.
Amazing. Okay.
It's
Awesome.
nothing fancy, but then again, so
There we go.
not everybody loves Excel, but I grew up a math guy, so I just, yeah, but it's really, yeah. And I'd be happy. And I'll once I share a video, I just covered it really quickly, but I share a video on that spreadsheet to where, hey, here's how you input the numbers. And yeah, I mean, I would love to share, because here's the thing. A lot of people, if this helps somebody else do another deal, great. But a lot of times I'm also open if like people will see this and they'll be like, oh man, this is great, but I'm not comfortable doing this on my first one. So we always partner with people just like that to be able to, hey, we'll go do it with you the first time. And then if you need me next time, great. If not, no worries.
Amazing. Yeah. No, I know you do an awesome job in the sub two community, coming in and JVing on deals with people to help them close the deal. So I really appreciate you offering that to our community as well, both the spreadsheet and then, which we'll link to in the description here. And then, yeah, if you're willing to come in and JV on deals with people, like I know you'd mentioned, hey, if anyone needs help closing that deal, what's the best way to get in touch with you if they have a deal like that where they're like, oh, let's bring in Casey to see if he can help us close this.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you guys can find me really anywhere, whatever social media you use. So I'm on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is. Just spell my name. So Casey Gregersen with all E's. But then you can also, what I encourage people to do is go to our website, caseygregersen.com. So it's going to have all the links you need, depending on what you're looking for. And then I also have our passive investing playbook. So the reason I created it was I work with a lot of oil and gas people who didn't know where to start when it came to real estate, right? They weren't like me and didn't start listening to a bunch of podcasts and read Rich Dad Poor Dad, or maybe they did, but then it kind of stopped there. And also for a lot of investors who are like wholesaling, or maybe they're just, I work with a ton of young guys who are like, man, I love this real estate. I want to get in the game. I want to do some deals. And so I actually start off with this called my passive investing playbook. One of the first videos you watch is like, hey, what is your investing avatar, right? Do you want to be a fix and flipper or wholesaler? Do you want to, which is very active, right? Do you just want to be a turnkey buyer and have it all done for you, but you be the actual owner, right? So which is kind of in the middle. And then the most passive way is, do you just want to invest in a fund or a syndication or be a private money lender? So I kind of go through that video and show you the pros and cons of each one, and the amount of time commitment and resources for each one. And that way people can kind of figure out like, where do they want to start?
Yeah. Man, that's so good. I appreciate you giving people so many options. And again, like, I mean, we have people on our end, both on the active side where they're just trying to stand out in their market, and they're going up against a bunch of the other cash offers, right? So I love the spreadsheet and the idea of kind of like JVing with the seller almost in that flip process. And then all the way through to the passive option. So really appreciate you sharing that out too. I know I don't want to run too long on you, but I did have one other question on the sales piece. I mean, I know you've mentioned like your superpower, and I can see it is really being able to close on the phone and helping people, close deals. What do you think makes your approach different than the people who are having problems closing deals? Like what helps you stand out in that way? Like, do you have any advice there on how to become a better closer, like what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many little things you can be doing from that skills you acquire over time, and like reading books. Like one of my favorite books is Never Split the Difference. Honestly,
Chris
I need to
Voss.
see that
Yeah.
again. I've read it, I think 2 or 3 times. I need to do it again. But I think I think fundamentally it just comes down to solving problems, right? And this is the beauty of knowing how to close deals using creative finance, because I use the tool belt analogy, right? So if you got your tool belt and your only tool is the hammer, which the hammer is, I got to go offer them cash and I got to buy this thing at such a big discount, and I can help people who are super motivated, right? That's only one solution you can have, right? But what's helped is investing time in reading and other communities and just learning creative finance. Now I've got all these tools in my belt. So I've got my Novation tool, right? That we talked about that. I've got the seller finance one, which we haven't even talked about, where seller owns the house free and clear. And I just say, hey, why don't I just give you a down payment and make payments, right? And the other big fourth one is like, what if they don't have equity but they have a pretty low interest rate loan, so they can't really sell it, but they gotta get it sold, and the payment is just eating them alive. And most of those people don't want to be landlords, right? Like some people are like, well, why wouldn't they just be a landlord like you? But most people don't want to be a landlord. So if you could take over those loans sub two, it's another great strategy. But that's like 4 or 5 different tools I have in my tool belt when I go into this to be a closer, right? But before you get to all the tools, you got to understand their problem and their situation. So getting better about just intently listening to questions and doing enough deals, right? Like not everyone. And the funny thing is, I've talked a ton about this with my team, right? And I remember when I first joined another mastermind, I'm like, how do you? Because as I grew my team, right, I wanted to hire more closers to where we could do more deals and I could be doing bigger things in my company, right, and be a true like CEO. But what I found is like how it's you could learn how to just underwrite deals and at like 70% of ARV minus repairs minus your wholesale fee, right? A lot of people can kind of work their way through that, but not everybody can close creatively. So it's definitely, to actually answer your question how I've done it, it takes time, right? No one can just walk in a creative and be like and pitch all these different deals. But I think what I would recommend is people, you got to learn one first, and the simplest one is learn how to make a cash offer, right? And then learn how to do novations would probably be my second next one. Then learn how to work with houses that are free and clear, and then learn sub two. But don't do them all at once, but just kind of keep repping them and learning from other people. And over the years, you'll get all these tools in your tool belt. And then when you have them all, that's pretty powerful. Because then, guys, because that's here's the last thing, Matt, is like now it opens up my funnel to where typically,
Yep.
yeah, like you do all this marketing. You guys know it, right? You could pay
Oh, yeah.
DealMachine, and they could give you all these leads, right? And you could do pay per click, and you could do Google ads, and you could do direct mail, and all these different marketing channels, right? But it all costs money, and if all you can close is that cash offer, to me, it's scary, right? And it's honestly, that's probably why I forced myself to develop these skills, because I want to be able to monetize as many leads as I can. And now because I have all these tools in my tool belt, it allows me to spend more money on marketing, right? And take bigger risks because I know that I can monetize those leads.
I love that. That's an awesome mindset. The Brandon Turner book you mentioned, that was one of my favorite books that got me, that and Rich Dad both, or what inspired me to be more interested in real estate too. And podcasts like this. So, Casey, that was so good, man. I'll make sure to follow up so we can get those links from you on the spreadsheet and everything. And really, open people's minds on how you can stand out in your market and continue and start to add more tools to your tool belt like this. So, Casey, what is there any other best way to get in touch with you, or just making sure our audience can team up with you when they want to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just thinking about this. You guys can see I get excited and I talk fast, and we're doing a lot of different stuff, and some of it might seem like really advanced and sophisticated, or like you can't do it, but like kind of like I said at the end, you got to start somewhere and just start getting on the phones and calling deals, right? And whether you want to, as I mentioned, whether you want to be active or passive, like I would just love for people to reach out and connect and be like, hey, Casey, this is where I'm at. I love that you said that. How do I start to do that, right? So the best way is to hit me up on Instagram or go watch our YouTube channels. That's the other thing too, is I put a lot of this stuff. I just started doing it years ago, right? Like we're doing deals and it's exciting and we're learning different things. So what I try to do is break it down. A lot of these things, like I covered like 10 or 20 different things today here, right? All in one, like 30-minute podcast. If you go to my YouTube channel, I break them down into like specific, like, hey, here's how we do novations. Here's how we do the revive method, right? Here's how we build rapport with the seller. I try to break those all down on our YouTube channel. So that's probably the best resource, Matt, for people to go check out. But if all else, I encourage people, send me a direct message on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, and I'd love to help any way I can.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time out. Again, we'll link to that with all the other resources you've mentioned here too. But Casey, really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Yeah. To everyone watching. Yeah, absolutely. Matt Camp over here with DealMachine, and happy deal finding, guys.